Davies.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and may I firstly say I think this is the first time I've served under your chairmanship, and it's a great pleasure to do so. We've also sat on the back benches for many years and watched and been very impressed by the loquaciousness of members of Parliament on both sides of the House who happen to sit as front benches and who have sometimes been able to entertain us, those of us on the back benches, for so long that we haven't actually had a chance to get in and speak ourselves. Now, I gather that time is a bit short today, and because I think that it's very important that everyone has the opportunity to contribute, I'm going to limit myself to 10 minutes. I see many others are queuing up to get into the room even as we speak. This issue of the constitutional changes in the Boundaries Bill was the first one that we looked at in the Welsh Affairs Select Committee. May I say, actually, before I go on to it, that it's been a great pleasure to work with all members of the Select Committee. I think that the Select Committee system is one of the great unsung success stories of Parliament, and I wish that those members of the public who think that we spend all our time arguing with each other could actually see what goes on in a Select Committee where, despite the range of views, there is always room to find compromise and agreement on certain issues. And on this issue, I think that we unanimously had a number of concerns. The first thing that we looked at was actually the holding of the referendum on the same day as the Welsh Assembly elections. We expressed concerns about that and made it clear that we thought the government would need to take measures to make sure that that went off smoothly. And to be fair, I think it has gone off very smoothly, perhaps with with some concerns still about the timing of the counting of the votes. Overall, there weren't that many spoiled ballot papers, and the two elections went smoothly, so I'm glad that that bit was fine. But there remain many concerns over the proposals to reorder the boundaries in Wales and to reduce the number of MPs by a significant amount, probably around about a quarter. There are concerns about the impact that that is going to have on the ability of Wales and people in Wales to ensure that their voice is heard in Parliament. I accept the points that have been made previously by the member for Torfaen, that this is one of the greatest changes since the Great Reform Act, and that at all times since then, Wales has always had strong representation to reflect the fact that we're a small nation and that we need to have a way of getting our voice across. I do have to add, though this wouldn't have been in the report, that this argument is somewhat weakened by the establishment of a Welsh Assembly, and I think this is something that members have to take account of. But nonetheless, it is. I'm certainly happy to give way.
Davies.
The honourable member will know that the government continues to talk about greater democratic accountability and Lords reform and this sort of thing. But obviously he'll be aware that the current plans are to get rid of 50 elected representatives in Parliament, in the House of Commons, in particular a quarter of Welsh MPs, and at the same time we see an extra 150 unelected Lords and no real chance of these Lords reforms going forward. Isn't he worried about having a greater and greater proportion of unelected people and less elected people? And would he vote against that?
Well, the honourable member is wisely anticipating something that I'm about to come on to, and I want to come very much back to that point, and he may hold me to it. Let me just say, first of all, point out the obvious, and the Minister will want to deal with this, that Wales is geographically challenging when it comes to offering representation. By that I mean that many of the communities are cohesive because of the topography of the area. There are certain valleys which make obvious constituencies. It may be that they don't have the requisite number of people, and they may never have the requisite number of people. But it isn't going to be, in my view, terribly wise to simply come along and say, right, that can constitute a constituency, and we'll add a little bit of that next door valley just so that we get the numbers absolutely right. Because what may look easily nearby on a map isn't necessarily going to be that easy to access. We already have areas that are probably quite challenging to be a good constituency MP for. I see the member for Montgomeryshire is here, Brecon and Radnor, very large constituencies. Presumably these constituencies are going to get geographically larger still, and that is going to pose challenges for the Member of Parliament who's going to have to represent them. I fear that to some extent we're jumping on or allowing this bandwagon to roll on that suggests that all Members of Parliament are lazy, they haven't got enough to do, so let's just give them all an extra 10,000 people and get rid of a few because it will get us a good headline in the newspaper. I very much hope that's not the case, but I fear that as a profession we don't stand up for ourselves and nobody else stands up for us either. And I think we do have a right to say that, like anyone else, I want to be treated exactly the same as anyone else in this country. When I read in the press that MPs should be treated the same as everyone else, I say I couldn't agree more with that. It's about time we were treated the same in all respects. That also means that if somebody comes along and changes your terms and conditions of work at the stroke of a pen, you ought to be entitled to a certain amount of notice about that. And that certainly, if you're going to be given a lot of extra work to do, and I take my role very seriously, as I know members on all sides do, then I think it's only right that you should be given time to prepare for that. Now, the honourable member, I promised I'd come back to, made a very, very good point about the proposals to reform the House of Lords. I could have understood perhaps some of the urge to reduce the number of MPs from 650 to 600, were it not for the fact that whilst we're doing that, we're increasing the number of members of the House of Lords and possibly going to be about to elect them as well on an 80-20 basis, although we'll have to wait and see if that really comes to pass. It certainly looks as though it's going to be a lot more expensive to manage the House of Lords. Now, surely if we're thinking about doing this in a cohesive fashion, we might have considered the possibility of actually maintaining the same number of members of Parliament at 650, so that whilst we might have reordered the constituencies to get the same number in, we could at the same time have made sure that they were closer to what they are at the moment, and not necessarily expected MPs to do all sorts of extra work, because I have no problem with working very hard as a Member of Parliament, but putting an extra 10,000 people into a constituency is going to put certain challenges and give people challenges, and I don't think we should necessarily jump to do that just because the tabloids are demanding it. I'm delighted to give way.
Give way for a very brief question. Was how many of his constituents have actually written to him asking that we put these measures as a priority?
Davies.
I would say, in all truth, hardly any have written to me about this. In fact, there have been a few members who've written to me saying we're shocked and horrified that 1 in 4 members of Parliament in Wales are going to disappear. And I've had to write back and say I'm pretty surprised by it as well and a little bit concerned. But unfortunately, you're going to have to fly the flag for me on this one, because I dread to think what the Daily Mail will do if they perceive that I'm simply trying to protect my own job. The reality is that members of Parliament work extremely hard at the moment. I have no problem in members of Parliament working harder in the future if that's possible, but I do have a problem with the timing of this, the way it's been done very, very quickly, and I have to ask myself why that is. I was surprised that there weren't more opportunities to debate it, although I don't entirely blame the government for that. There was at least one member from Wales who's not present now who seemed to have the ability to deliver speeches at the drop of a hat lasting more than an hour on different clauses of the bill, which prevented us from getting to particular amendments that apply to Wales. I mean, you know, I listen to Radio 4's Just a Minute sometimes. He could have done just an hour quite easy. I mean, to be fair to him, to pay him a little compliment, he was actually quite entertaining. Not many people can speak for an hour and be entertaining at the same time. I'm going to struggle to make 10 minutes at this rate. One other... I'm not going to name the member concerned, and I shall let that comment stay on the record. Another issue that concerned us when we conducted this report was the evidence that we received that much of the information that the Boundaries Commission are going to work on is either out of date or inaccurate, because not enough people are not the right. There are too many people who should be on the electoral roll but haven't registered for one reason or another. And we were assured by the cabinet member, the Minister for the Cabinet, the Member of Parliament for Forest of Dean, that there would be a great deal of work done on this to ensure that the accurate numbers of people were recorded and that the information is based on accurate. The information that is worked on is accurate before the boundaries are redrawn. So I look forward to hearing from the Minister later on as to what work has actually been undertaken to ensure that everyone who should be on the electoral roll is on the electoral roll. I'm happy to do so.
To that specific issue, I'm grateful for you for the Honourable Member giving way. In relation to that specific issue in terms of voter registration, would the Honourable Member agree with me that the issue is a particular concern along the North Wales coast where we do have a transient population?
Davies.
I do agree with the honourable member, but the evidence that we had suggested that it's an issue in all parts of Wales, and also perhaps particularly in some of the more urban areas as well. Either way, if it's an issue in just one part of one constituency, it's a big issue because it's about democracy and making sure that everyone is able to exercise their right to vote. And how big it is, I couldn't honestly say, but I look forward to the Minister giving us some explanation of that. I will, but I'm looking at the clock.
Geraint Davies.
Wouldn't he accept a disproportionate... I can't speak.
Sorry.
There's a tendency for... I better refrain.
Oh, sorry, didn't hear.
David Davies.
I'm happy to give way to the honourable member again, if he wants, because I'm afraid I apologise, but I didn't quite hear what he said then. If he wants to intervene on me again, then he's more than welcome to do so.
Geraint Davies.
Would he accept that there's a disproportionate tendency for poorer communities not to register, and hence the boundary should really be done on the best estimate of the number of people eligible to vote, as opposed to those who are registered, given that the bit young people, ethnic communities, people in private rented accommodation, etc., are underrepresented?
David Davies.
Personally, I wouldn't accept that, because I thought the evidence that we had was that there are significant numbers of people who are not registered to vote. It is quite right that we asked the cabinet member responsible to come back to us with further information as to how that was going to be rectified, and indeed he promised us announcements and assured us that action was going to be taken. I don't think we had enough evidence to actually say where the problem is most widespread, and I certainly don't think, personally, that we should start reordering the boundaries based on what is at best an educated guess as to what the problem might be, i.e. having a look at constituencies and saying, well, that's not very affluent and urban, so therefore we think that there must be X percent who aren't registered, and we'll just reorder the boundary on that particular basis.
A number of honourable members have campaigned about increasing registration over a long period of time, not just on this issue, but we've just had a census. Will the information that is going to be revealed by the census be able to be used by the Electoral Commission in their calculations and their judgments?
David Davies.
He's asking me, and perhaps I should take this as a compliment, because I think it's a question that probably ought to be presented to the Minister. I'd be tempted to say that I shall check with my officials and write to the honourable gentleman. I haven't got even a researcher working for me in London, so I'm sure the Minister will reply for me in a few minutes.
Alan Michael.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving away, but he may be aware of the work that was done by the Committee on Standards in Public Life during my period as a member of that committee, which highlighted the failure of the Electoral Commission to exercise the powers it already has to encourage consistency of registration right across the country. And isn't that one of the things that we could agree, that the consistency of registration does need to be driven up in advance of the move, which all parties have supported, to individual registration, because the transition from one to another is a potentially fragile period which could make a bad situation worse.
David Davies.
Yes, I think that is something that we could all agree on. I mean, I can only say that in evidence, the Minister promised that there would be very strong action to rectify this problem. And it's probably a failing on my part, but I'm not as yet absolutely certain that I know what that action is going to be. But I'm sure we're all going to be enlightened today. What the Boundaries Commission also said to us was that they were going to look purely at numbers. When they gave evidence, that is, they said it is a numbers game. Nothing else is going to come into the equation. We're not going to look at the topography, the geography, the geographical size of the constituency or anything else, or the local authority boundaries. We are simply going to look at the numbers. Since that evidence was given, I have detected a slight change in tone, in that they are now talking about trying to match up local authority boundaries where they can, but it's primarily going to be all about numbers.
Just outline, the honourable gentleman
talking now about the intentions of the Boundary
Yes,
Commission
yes.
as distinct
Sorry,
from
yes,
the,
yes, I moved
the
on.
standards improvement I was
Yeah.
talking about in relation to
Yes.
the Electoral Commission. I think the 2 points are consistent as long as we're...
Yeah, the honourable
Davies.
member is absolutely right. I fully accept the point he made about the Electoral Commission, and I'm wrapping up my allocated time now, but saying that that is what the Boundaries Commission have said. Their original evidence worries me. The messages that have been coming out since then reassure me a little bit, but I think at the end of the day we're still going to end up with completely different constituencies, and with 1 in 4 MPs in Wales disappearing. I say this for the last time, and I think I will finish now. Genuinely, we haven't stood up for ourselves. We've been afraid to stand up for ourselves. The vast majority of people in this room and in the House of Commons work very hard and do a very, very good job. To some extent, we've been pushed into accepting this because I think we're afraid that we will be seen to be self-serving if we don't accept a large cut in our own numbers. It becomes much harder to justify cutting the number of MPs on a cost basis if at the same time we're going to spend large sums of money funding the House of Lords, whether they be elected, appointed, some mixture of both, I don't know. And the government need also to explain to us if they support the role of a backbench MP in holding ministers to account through forums such as the Welsh Affairs Select Committee, what is going to happen to the number of ministers. If we're about to cut, if we're looking to save money by cutting the number of MPs, I hope that the consistency is also going to be applied to ministers as well. Thank you very much.